Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Monday, August 4th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it'll take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. You can also, from that original page, the Start Here page, you can download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process, and if you choose to listen to them, even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. And if you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if you're able to, during broadcast time, you can join us through Zoom, either on your phone or through your web browser. And once you do either call the number that one of the many numbers that Zoom makes available, or open your web browser, all you need to do then is add our meeting ID for this. And the meeting ID is 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. And if you're calling on the phone and listening, you can mute and unmute yourself with *6. And at any point in time, even if I seem to be engaged in a monologue or reading something from a book, if you have a comment or a question, we welcome it. A comment, a question, or even a refutation. And we'd be happy to hear it. Just unmute yourself and speak up, and we'll see what we can do to entertain Any comment or question you might have? So I wanted to mention that over the weekend, yesterday, Guy Finley did a talk which just, every once in a while, life doesn't go the way we think it should. And people get upset with the way life goes. And every once in a while, that turns out to be a blessing. If not, and every time it turns out to be a blessing. It's either every time or once in a while, and you get to decide. Quite literally, we all decide whether or not we're going to accept what's happening in life as the flow of life as a blessing, or if we're going to label it bad or wrong. And the reason for that little sidebar is that Guy Finley and his wife have decided to move to Florida and sell his Life of Learning Foundation. I forget how many acres and buildings he has there, but it's a beautiful little, it's not massive, but it's a beautiful setting in Oregon, and they've decided to move to Florida instead and close down that intensive center or healing center. As I listened to Sunday's talk, and there's all kinds of adjustments they have to make because some of the support team is in Florida and Guy Finley is still at the place in Oregon, etc. As I listened to that talk, I thought, oh, he's mellowing out again. I had been thinking recently that the frequency with which he would generate irritation and then, feel the need to apologize was increasing. And he would be irritated if they put up the wrong graphic for the talk or if someone didn't seem to be paying attention in the room in front of him the way he wanted them to or whatever. It just seemed to my sensibilities that he was getting more irritable to the point where I actually, I thought about sending a message and saying, hey, you might want to look at this. Well, I got the sense from the talk that he did on Sunday that he's softening, that I can imagine that the decision to move and close that foundation after 25 or 30 years was a huge piece of work that happened over months, if not years. And when it finally came to do it, all of the moving pieces and all of the machinery and technology and the logistics of the house move, etc., was just building up. And so maybe we'll see a return to some of the lighter, story-filled talks from Guy Finley. The punchline, the bottom line here is that I would just recommend the talk from Sunday. And you can get it for free if you go to guyfinley.org/channel. It will just ask you for a name and an email address. And once you give that to them, you're on your own. You're off and running. And it was yesterday. So it was the talk from August 3rd, Sunday, August 3rd. And it'll be a replay that you can just listen to with Audible or video. And as I said, all you have to do is give them a valid name and email, and it's free. So we have plenty of time for comments, questions. answers, testimonials. I've had a lot on my mind. I've had a few patterns that happen in my practice has been on my mind. One of them is the idea that people think they should, and then dot dot dot. So ellipsis. Put whatever you think wants to follow that. And in that process, the judgment and the comparison, it's probably not an exaggeration to say our whole life in the physical realm, for most of us, gets built around that. And wow, what a distortion. Because it has to come from perception and it has to come from our past. How can you be awake and aware, fully awake and aware in the present moment and think I should, unless it's coming from the past? Now, the trick of the mind will be that it'll tell me, well, what I should do is just the next right thing. But what we're observing here is that the mind is so quick to jump in and assess and compare and label that it doesn't need my assessment. What I can do that will be a blessing for everyone will just flow if I'm open to it. It's not going to come, oddly enough, most of the time. What I will do that will end up being a blessing to myself and others in a given situation will not be what my conscious logical mind tells me to do. It will be what just spontaneously flows from me when I'm awake and aware and paying attention in the moment. And Susan Bingham says, that's a great question. And I'm wondering, what question? You can either type in what question or unmute. What was the great question?
The question was, are we in the moment if we have a should thought? Where have we gone? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah, and of course it's a rhetorical question. We are not in the moment if we have a should thought.
mm-hmm.
Right? That the should has to be something that has been mentally rehearsed. It's been there before. Otherwise, I couldn't recognize it.
Right. And
Or
it has
I wouldn't bring it as a thought into the moment.
yeah.
What were you going to say? It has what?
Well, just a gazillion questions. I should go clean my sister's litter boxes for her cats because she is now not only unwilling but now unable, and I live nearer her than any other of my siblings, much nearer, and she and the cats are separate. I might not clean the litter boxes because my sister has been avoiding doing them anyway. Now she has the perfect excuse, and I don't feel like doing anything for her, which is also a worksheet or 2 or 3 or 10. But what about the cats? So I told my sister this morning, I'm going to figure this out, get some help for you, whether me or hiring one of the boys who's living in the house. Not for you. I'm not doing it for you, Joe, I told her. I'm doing it for your animals. They don't deserve this. And of course, she feels terrible. And we got into a really good discussion about how she has always felt that she wasn't worth anything, that she was worthless. I know she has felt that way, and her way of dealing with it is to buy stuff for herself and to refuse any negative mother from way past psychotherapy training word. She refuses anyone who says she should do anything. She'll say no, even if it's in her absolutely best interests. And you have to navigate around that negative mother like double thing. Joe, absolutely, you should not get an ice cream cone. Guess what she's going to do? She's going to get the ice cream cone. That sort of thing. It's been a lifelong dance we've done. And, when my mother wasn't around, we were really good friends. We were remembering that. We'd sing songs at night. We shared a room. We'd sing songs to each other, tell stories, laugh. But when my mother showed up, we became monsters. We wanted her attention. And how did we get it? By being bitchy, little, horrible, bratty kids. Anyway, I'm going way far off your question. I'm just telling you, you sparked a few thoughts, Dr. Tim. So anyway,
Yeah, I guess I did.
yeah. Well, so anyway, I don't have anything more to say. Of course, I always have things. I'm going to mute myself so you can keep talking about what you started talking about, which is just such a good question.
Well, but it's just an observation, right? It's a rhetorical question. And it's coming, it's coming to me from the Guy Finley talk and from my clinical sessions today so far. So there are times when I have this emotional ache right in the middle of a session when I'm working with somebody who's living their life from the should factory.
Good. It's a good phrase. Yes. And you resonate with it, obviously. I mean,
Well, I realize how miserable my life was when I did that.
when you did that past tense, do you no
Right.
longer do it?
I don't do anywhere near as much as I used to. Absolutely
Okay.
not. All right. The should, that's the whole point of this work and trying to do worksheets. Every time I have a should and there's a negative tightness, physical sensation or emotion in me, I've got worksheets I can do, or in the moment
Yeah.
I can do the mental short version. And as I do that, I literally start to dismantle what Guy Finley would call the mechanical level of mind that just keeps churning, what Michael Ryce would call the 9-bit mind.
Mm.
And what Michael Ryce also calls the
Oh yeah, that long thing. He's got a long
so it went right out of my head. So the non-being mind, right? So the pseudo solution for the
of the
non-being mind.
non-being mind. There you go.
And it's the non-being mind that just spins and uses the past and have to gather my thoughts here. So when we are creating the discomfort that's in us by pouring our mind energy into the I should, which is old stuff, it's been programmed into us. Way of Mastery says it's been crammed into the intellect like garbage in a garbage can. Because in essence, it isn't needed, right? I don't need to bring my past into the present moment most of the time. There are
Mm.
very few circumstances in which I need for my physical safety and preservation to bring stuff from the past into the present moment and then assume that that's happening here. Very few times in my life today, now that most of us are as human beings, we're not living out in the wild and we're not in the middle of the food chain anymore. We're at the top of the food chain. So it's rare that our lives are in physical danger.
Yeah.
So what my mind is telling me isn't needed unless I'm in that physical danger. If it's a danger from the past that I need to be aware of, okay. But another way to get at that is I just keep my eyes open in the moment. I'm awake and aware in the moment. And as Krishnamurti would say, I let the truth of life in the moment act on me, and I let my response flow from that. That's the opposite of what happens when I walk into a situation loaded with the mind energy of should this and should that, and the world should unfold this way, and people should treat me like this, and I should treat others like that. And I walk into a situation throwing those ideas and shoulds onto my interpretation of what's unfolding in life. And that's a recipe for misery, right? That's a recipe for disaster. If what I want is peace, or if what I want is a peace that passes all understanding, then I can't also have the shoulds, or I can't also value the shoulds. I mean, I can't really get rid of the shoulds. They've been programmed in there. They'll bounce around. I can at any given moment, I can have any thought that any human being has ever had. That's not a problem. Well, I could turn it into a problem if I decide to value it, or as Byron Katie would say, if I decide to believe it's true. And when I believe a thought is true, I pour my creative mind energy, my creative force, which is my mind energy, into that, and it becomes a bigger part of my experience of life in the moment. It becomes true for me, if you want to say it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
May I share in?
Yes. Welcome, Celinda.
Thank you. This is from my personal experience, Susan. About 35 years ago or more, I was listening to Louise Hay a lot, and she had little cassette tapes and things like that, and I was listening to them about as much as I listened to the Aramaic Gospel today. And she said one little thing. She said, you want to have freedom, but she didn't say exactly those words, but that's how I interpreted it. If you want to have peace of mind and begin dismantling your conscious or unconscious belief systems, drop should, unless it's should it rain, I shall take my umbrella, which is not an obligation, but simply a simple future conditional. Drop should and replace it with could. To practice, just like Tim was saying, Dr. Tim, in that it took me a long time to habituate myself to first noticing that I was shooting on someone and just substituting the word could. And now, 40 years later, 35 years later, whatever, I am realizing that I never really gave myself permission to quit shooting on myself. And now I am realizing there was an incident that happened between Larry and me, and I realized he was still my power person, and that I needed to express my truth, and I was stifling expressing it, and so I let the incident kind of settle for a couple of days, and then I went in and told him, I'm not interested in this again, and I will have to take some sort of language to help myself feel, some sort of action to help myself feel safe, and I don't want to do that because I'm very committed to our relationship. So anyway, I noticed that he was horrified at his behavior and confused and everything else. And what slipped out of my mouth was, it doesn't matter whether we're waking or sleeping. We're going to react from what our habitual patterns are. And I said, I think maybe you might need some help, just like all of us. So anyway, let that be as it is. You could, if you wanted to, Susan, practice substituting could every time you hear yourself say it. Oops. Retract, delete, could. I could. She could. It could. The weather could be nicer, but whatever, you know. And it's very
So are you saying that's what you're doing that's working so well for you?
Yes, now, just after this incident, I realized I was still using Larry as a power dynamic in relation to being afraid. And I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to express my truth, take care of myself, express my truth as gently as I can and as kindly as I can, and then see as how life directs me, because I felt directly guided to wait a couple days and let Larry stew in it for a little while so that he can maybe calm down enough and look at some things he would never look at before. And so it's a continuing process. I don't know where it's going. I'm living in the moment. We're totally committed to each other. We both have our work to do, and I made that very clear, that it was a co-creative process, and I had my work to do, and that maybe he might want to start looking at some of his past and seeing if there's any connection, because he's very resistant to looking at the past. He's like, oh, just get over it, you know, like he did mention.
All right. So
let
me just ask you to take a breath so I don't get completely lost.
Okay.
And instead of talking about him and how he doesn't want to do the past, etc., or about what Susan should do, what we encourage people to do on this show and in the support groups is just share about yourself and or ask questions to help clarify what's going on with you. So if you take a breath and get centered and bring that back to you, what do you end up with?
Okay.
What do you want to share with us?
What I want to share with you is that I'm feeling empowered. I'm feeling calmer. I'm actually feeling more love flowing from me towards Larry, more compassion, because I'm sure I was shooting on him in very subtle ways. Oh, don't use the word, but here, body language, etc., that he might interpret that way, even if it wasn't meant that way, because we all have our own meaning for body language too. And I just feel empowered. I feel calmer. I feel more courageous. Feel that what I said, more compassionate. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Because I realized from speaking with Michael, I just hadn't realized to the depth of how my grandmothers both nurtured me and how fortunate I was. I got to live with my dad's side of the family for 2 years out of my growing up. And I don't think Larry had any of that support. At least he's never mentioned someone in his family he was very, very fond of, other than a casual reference about one incident with his grandmother, one of his grandmothers. So that's what I'm feeling. And it's all started 40-some years ago with a simple decision that I was going to do my best to stop shooting on myself. And also an incident happened to me in Overeaters Anonymous, where a gentleman visitor from Canada said two things. And one is very graphic, and I hope you don't mind, but they were important to me. In one part of the conversation during the break, where I just came unglued talking to him, he said, well, you could stop shooting on yourself and other people, and that might help. And the other thing he said in the course of the conversation, now, you could stop masturbating And those two very graphic expressions just stuck with me all of these years. So I share them in love and gratitude for all of us. And that's all I have. And the other thing about Guy Finley, this is the last little thing. I would imagine from my personality, I could imagine that a lot of his irritation was a cover for his emotional pain, because that's a lot of investment, what he's done there in Merlin. A lot of emotional investment, or even his little deer that he loves so much, all of that. So I laugh now, and I just listen to him, and when he gets irritated, I say, have I ever got irritated? And I just, he's no different than the rest of us. So I'll cut him a little slack.
I'm sure he appreciates that. All right. Anything else from you?
Just there, but for the grace of God, go on.
I heard that many a time growing up. Many a time.
It's a good one, Dr. Kim.
Okay.
It's a channel to blessing. Goodbye.
It's what?
A channel to blessing.
A channel to blessing. I guess I'm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there, but for the grace of God, go I. It's a channel to compassion and blessing.
Okay.
For me. Yeah.
If we can remember it, yep, that would be good. It's, there are those from the non-dualistic perspective that would say the real challenge is to realize that's not there and I'm not over here. We're all in this together.
Amen. That's the way I feel about Larry now.
And that is the biggest, perhaps one of the biggest obstacles to intimacy. And of course, it's the root of our mental and emotional and spiritual suffering, is this dream of separation, right? When we begin to create, it came to me, we have the old adage, oh, the tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. In other words, you tell a lie, and then you got to remember who you lied to and what you said and when, and so now there's got more strands of the spider's web that you got to sort out and make sure that you don't want to get stuck on this one or that one. It's a tangled web of complexity that we create when first we practice to lie, to deceive. And the more we talked about things on this show, the more we listened to the Anil Seth videos on hallucinating perception, the more a variety of these different sources of material come in, the more I realize, oh, you know what? One day it came to me to say, oh, the tangled web we weave when first we practice to perceive. So this is from the Course in Miracles. Michael was quoting it fairly recently. Perception is made as attack on God, right? And think not that you made the world. Illusion, yes, right? Distortion, perception, yes, but not the actual capital W world. So if we understand that the pictures my mind is showing me are not all there is to see from the world around me, then I can start to move into that questioning state. And it's one of the things that I took from Guy Finley's talk from yesterday, was that he talks about the necessary factor of putting ourselves in the questioning state, not knowing where things are going, not knowing how life is going to turn out, not knowing how the next situation might hold the very conditions that I need in order to learn my next lesson, to move forward in my life, in order to release what is less than loving or necessary within me. And it sounded very similar to Michael Rice's discussions, but it was coming right out of Guy Finley. And as I say so often when these things happen, these people clearly are tapping into the same source material. And, as people do that, sometimes what one person gets from the source material lands really well and people like it and they want more of it. And other person reads the same source material and comes out with a lesson and it isn't what they want to hear. And it isn't necessarily that one is right and one is wrong. It's that there's more than one way to look at a situation. There's more than one way to interpret any given situation. And there will be always, as far as I'm aware, it's been my whole life, I anticipate it'll continue, there'll always be somebody around who wants to argue and people who want to demonstrate who's right and who's wrong. My work in this field doesn't focus on that. My work in this field focuses on what are the similarities? If one is different than the other, how is it different? Which one seems to work better? Does one work better in one situation and another works better in another situation? That's an interpretive tool that has taken me much further in my own understanding and benefit and resolving my own upsets and in my relationship with others. Yeah, it's bumping into the space where there aren't any words. I've had a number of interactions with people just in this past weekend where the intensity of the emotion was so big, there weren't really any words to describe it. But we're supposed to be communicating with somebody else. Or I want to reach out and let them know that I was, grateful for what they did or said or our time together. And yet I'm grateful. This doesn't seem close. It just doesn't seem close. I had another situation where I was working with somebody and they have a terrible time making decisions. They've had their whole life. They remember being a child. If their shoes are worn out and it's time to go get new shoes and they're, in their preteen years. So they're old enough to, show a preference or say, I like this over that. And this person would just get completely frozen. And it didn't matter whether it's a decision between one of two things or one of 17 things. It didn't matter. It didn't really help that much to narrow it down to just one or two or three options to choose from. This person would get stuck and frozen just around making a decision. Lifelong pattern, pervasive in their life, whether it's sitting at a nice restaurant trying to decide what to get off the menu, or it's deciding which restaurant to go to, or it's deciding I've got, 7 different friends doing 3 different things this weekend, which one will I go to? This person agonizes over every one of those. And so we tried to introduce the concept that in the future, coming up the very next time this occurs, that person can choose to do the goal canceling, can choose to do what I call the mental short version of the Reality Management Worksheet, which is on available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website on the educational materials page. And it's just, here I am in this situation. I feel a pressure or tension coming up in me because I don't know which decision to make. So what we suggested for this person is to just leave all the thoughts about the decision, the logistics and the specifics of the decision, put that aside for a minute and think about what's your goal in this. What is the goal? Either the simple goal of I just want to get it right, or maybe a goal of I want to experience everything, right? In other words, people type a lot in blogs and things these days about FOMO, fear of missing out, FOMO. So what's the opposite of FOMO? We don't want to talk about a goal as a negative thing. So what's the opposite of the fear of missing out? I want to experience everything. Just a suggestion we made for a different goal he could have. Cancel the goal and ask to be shown a different way to look at the situation. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to make the wrong decision. Okay, I want to make the right decision. I want to experience everything. The thought in my head might be, so-and-so is going to be upset with me if I make the wrong decision. My goal is I want to please this person. I want them to be happy with me. If you're one of those people who has a difficult time making decisions, I can attest to from my own experience and highly recommend application of the Reality Management Worksheet in the moment where you're feeling the frustration of or the difficulty in making the decision. What we understand from this work is that there's a level of complexity in thought that our minds create, not as a trap, not as a problem. They're trying. Our minds are creating these dynamics or habits of thought as a proposed solution to a problem the mind is experiencing. So I don't need to beat myself up over doing it. I don't need to get upset that I do it. I can accept and appreciate the part of myself that thought, hey, this will be a good thing to do, to learn to give people a silent treatment, or to learn to scream at people, or to learn to be a people-pleasing person. Or I can appreciate that younger part of myself. And when I say younger, I mean it could be from yesterday or last week, or 70 or 80 years ago. If I turn an appreciative eye toward that younger part, if I embrace that pattern of thought within myself and allow myself to immerse myself in it and soften and allow, immerse and allow, letting these thoughts and energies move through me, understanding I do not need to be driven by them. It's like Guy Finley's talk from yesterday where he's talked about, this fearless life isn't that I never experience fear, it's that I just don't fear the fear. I don't listen to the fear tell me what to do. I don't initiate my activities based on what my fear is telling me. Course in Miracles and Way of Mastery in various ways say, listen, you know what? There's a peacefulness in you. There's an access point within you to peacefulness and calm and right-mindedness. They talk about it in the Way of Mastery over and over again. They also mention it as the Holy Spirit or the Great Comforter. It has a variety of different names humans have given this process or connection or dynamic or this aspect of your being. We can call it whatever you want. But there's a part in you that can give you access to the greatest wisdom ever and the most perfect thing for you to do if you slow down and tune into it. if you simply ask to be taught. This is in the ancient Aramaic from the Khabouris manuscript and the translations that the Khabouris Foundation created, that says Tuvehun, the beginning of each of the Beatitudes, that word at the beginning of the Beatitudes, Tuvehun, Michael Ryce calls it a three-part word, three-part message that says a latent neural structure. In other words, something that may not be active right now, but it's in you and it's your gift, it's your birthright. This latent neural structure that's been implanted in you is there to break off the effects of your errors in thought and guide you to truth and happiness, right? So it's in you, it's yours, you can't get rid of it, it's always going to be there. That's part one. Part two is it's there to break off the effects of your errors in thought and guide you to truth and happiness. And part three is if you just ask it to. So can we sit with the turbulent turmoil of what's going on out there, or what might be going on in my frontal lobes and my thought, my mechanical level of mind? Can I sit with it long enough that it begins to realize that it's churning, it's spinning, it's trying to pound out an answer is the source of my pain, not the solution to my pain? And in Guy Finley's talk, he talks about that very same aspect of Jesus going through the temptations and Siddhartha sitting under the Bodhi tree. And what had to happen in both places was the end of the searching, the end of the striving, and the recognition that I don't know how to do this. I can't do this on my own. So I throw my proverbial hands up and say, show me, help me, teach me. To life, to God, to love, to spirit, to whatever you want to call it, to whatever keeps your heart beating, even when you're sleeping at night, keeps your breath moving without you thinking about it. This force of life that animates you, whether you like to think of it as human or not, or godlike or not, it has it's an undeniable level of intelligence that keeps all the cells in your body working together. Does that intelligence belong to a person or a God, or is it probably more accurate to say that intelligence is all that is and is God? It's not that there's a godlike person that has that intelligence that's so much brighter than ours. It's that there's some kind of rhyme or reason in this flow of life that at least at this physical realm level, we can't, we don't even have the words for, right? We may or may not have had the lived experience of it, but even if I lived through it, I still haven't created new words to try and describe how magnificent my trip was after 45 years to go back to the place I lived after college. There aren't any words. Magical kind of hints at it. A blessing kind of hints at it. So we have this problem that we're in this physical realm, but we are not just the physical. We have this expansive consciousness that can register energies and tune into vibrations and accept downloads, insights, intuition, inspiration, creativity. And it's not the part of your mind that can solve the math problem that you were given, because the only way you know anything about math or mathematics is it was programmed into you. And what we're alluding to and encouraging ourselves to tap into in this work is another aspect of your own intelligence, another aspect of a bigger intelligence that you always have access to. And yet, you're not trained to think about it or to use it, to tap into it, to explore it. And so we want to invite you to do that. We want to invite you to use whatever tools help you step into an experience of what the way of master would say, what's happening around the fringes of your perception. What's happening in the energy, in the subtle energies around what might show up in front of your senses as a solid hunk of energy, or a hunk of energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. So the power of the idea of giving up trying to live my life with my conscious logical mind as my master. This is what Einstein said is the problem. The conscious logical mind was supposed to be a faithful servant. It was never intended to be the master. That's wisdom that's also right there in the way of mastery. That your intellect was never designed to be your master. It was designed to be a very simple servant. A one or two dimensional tool, if you will, to be picked up and used in appropriate circumstances and then put away. So we have time. We've got 5 or 6, 8 minutes. How's this landing for you? What might have this stirred up for you? I have I guess I should say, I did mention on Thursday or Friday that Christian Sundberg is on the fence about whether or not he'll be here on this coming Friday for our session because he's trying to resolve symptoms of Lyme disease that he's recently either become aware of or have flared up. So we'll keep you posted on that. We will have a support group tomorrow from 6:30 to 9 Central Time, and one again on Thursday. And there will not be one on the 14th, Thursday the 14th. I will be traveling. But there will be a support group tonight, again this coming Thursday, and then next Tuesday. And as we say, most Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central Time. All the information you would need to join us is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. And we'd be happy to have you join us or pass that information along to somebody you think might benefit, because our policy is the more the merrier. And the more people we gather around us who are willing to look at their own issues and learn tools to apply to their own life situations, the greater the chance that we will grow and learn as they grow and learn.
Dr. Tim.
Yes.
Celinda brought up a phrase or a saying that you said you recognized there, but for the grace of God go I.
Yes.
And I don't know, I've always hated that because I thought, wait a minute, you're telling me that God's grace isn't out there, or they're not getting something that God would give? And it seemed like a cruel thing to say. So maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
No, you're not misunderstanding it. You're just understanding it in a different way than it was offered to us, right? That's what, it's not right or wrong. It's just words, right? What do you want to make them mean? You're making it mean that's a cruel thing, so that God is cursing these people, right?
Or withholding.
Yeah, yeah. And that's just not the way it was intended from the loving people that used it around me and tried to explain to me what it meant, right? So essentially, it was explained to me, just don't think you're better than anybody. That could be me tomorrow. None of us is guaranteed X, Y, or Z, right? We're all in this together. All of those were the meanings that were highlighted for me behind that phrase, there but for the grace of God go I. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so
Yep.
it's just a different meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And then years later, many, many years later, after hearing that on a regular basis growing up, I read the book The Mirror Theory. And in the Mirror Theory, there's a point, you've heard me talk about this before, where what's her name? her name will come to me. Sally, or what I'll call her Sally for now. She says, oh, it's Betsy. Betsy says to her teacher, Charlie, well, Charlie, you want me to be this nice person and all, but what am I supposed to do about my garbage history? And Charlie said, well, to begin with, why not give it a name with more reverence than disgust, right? Your garbage history sounds like something you're disgusted with, and you're clearly judging it as negative if you call it garbage, etc. So he says, why not give it a name with more reverence to begin with? Why don't you call it the love of God in search of self? And that's always been, in my mind, connected to that, there but for the grace of God go I, right? Like what they're going through if you're not incorporating any of the thoughts like Courageous Souls, that book Courageous Souls, or the book we just finished reading from Christian Sundberg, if you're not even incorporating that, you're just saying, okay, look, I'm going to make the most of whatever. I might have a message in my head like, the Lord won't give me more than I can handle. But I could also go into an explanation like, well, maybe I chose this. Maybe this is what I need to learn my lessons to move to the next level. So it isn't like this is being done to me. It's remembering that all of life is here for me to witness, to enjoy, to learn, to grow from, etc. And it'll be happening in ways that do not fit nicely into my little language and my intellectual teachings, because where this is coming from and where it's going is way beyond anything any human mind has ever conceived of. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Where this is coming from, everything in our lives, our existence, where it comes from, where we come from, and where it's going is way beyond anything any human mind could ever conceive of.
And it is all for me or you or whoever.
Yeah, it's all just for the purpose of being and creating and extending itself and expanding, and I can enjoy it or not. I can go to a symphony and say I hated it, or I can go to the symphony and say,